It is what it is. Don't force it. What was meant for me will be for me. These are all sayings that we tell ourselves, but are these phrases actually meaningful? Do they hold any weight? Or are we wasting our time? On this week's episode of the Infusion Breakdown Show, the Breakdown crew sat down amongst ourselves to discuss this topic. Let's see what we came up with.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Infusion Breakdown Show. As always, it's your boy Joshua Freeman. We have Mr. Funny Guy Desmond Tillman here. We have Brian Carey. How you guys doing? How you guys' week been? Memorial Day.
Cool, I'm recovering.
Oh yeah, you got your teeth pulled. How was that? Was it painful?
Wisdom teeth, nah. It's the worst part is the medication. It's just messing with my sleep schedule.
They still prescribe Vicodin.
Nah, I took hydrocodone, and then I'm on ibuprofen and amoxicillin, which is the antihistamine.
I didn't get that.
Bro, when I got my teeth pulled in I think it was 11th grade, the Navy hospital was quick to prescribe some Vicodin.
But as far as the topic, the question we have for today, do you believe in what is meant to be will be? So what do you guys think? Comment below, let us know. We want to hear you guys' opinions, okay? Did you want to start, Des? I feel like you're going to say the same thing, but you can start, Des, if you want.
Yeah. I'll provide two answers. So a lot of my later years, my adolescence, probably around 16 to maybe 22, 23, I had that philosophy because I was really somebody that was very, very, and I'm still to this day, I had a very, very structured, ideal path of life of how I wanted things to play. And so I always thought that whenever I would have arguments with my girlfriend at the time or, whether it be friendships or just how I was doing at school, I always had, that was kind of like my coping mechanism per se. I always told myself, if it's meant to be, it'll be. And typically it always does come back to what is quote unquote meant to be, but that's because there's a bit of manipulation going on. There is no just throwing that saying out into the air and then you not doing anything for things to come back. Or it could be the other person, choosing to make that decision. There's typically, at that age, not much growth involved. You're just doing it because it's a part of your routine. It's something you miss. It's something you need back because it gives you a level of comfort. And so basing it off that, I would think that, if that's your view of, how things pan out in life, it's cool. Because I understand that, for some of us, we do need those coping mechanisms to get us over the gate or over the fence per se. But for me, present day, I don't follow that philosophy anymore. And the reason why I say that is because it's kind of like that saying has a "it was written by" behind it, kind of like a thing to where your life is already planned out. What you're supposed to get out of life is going to happen because it's already pre-written. And I kind of look at that thing, look at that thinking, and compare it to my philosophy of today. And I think we had a conversation a couple weeks ago where I kind of developed this life or this mindset that life is more or less a big casino. Everything we do is based off some odds. Typically, most people in life, they follow a path that has the highest odds. You go to college to get an education, to get you a good job, because the odds of you getting a good paying job with a college degree is higher than if you were to, start off in a trade or, just try and work your way up through some, small business without any type of degree. It's always a game of odds. Or even if you try and, make money off of real estate or, the foreign exchange market or whatever, the odds are always higher for you to fail than they are for you to be successful. So looking at it like that, it's hard to have that if it's meant to be, it'll be mentality, because you have to do so much to let what you think will be in order for it to happen. Like you have to put in so much work to get to that end goal. It's more or less, putting in the necessary work. So something that you perceive you think you deserve can happen, will happen, if that makes sense. I think I'm getting kind of tongue twisted right there, because it's an interesting, like, whoever came up with it, it's interesting philosophy, but really nothing happens by chance. You always put in, I feel like you always have to put in the work, whether if it's a minimum amount of work or a maximum amount of work for something to get, you know, where you feel it's supposed to be. That ultimate end goal is really where I'm trying to reel everything into.
Yeah, I got you. That's why I said we was kind of going to say the same thing, because I'm basically on that level. But I kind of do believe in it. Like, do believe in what is meant to be will be. But I feel it's really kind of different from what most people really take it as, because I really feel most people take it as like a future oriented sense. Like, they're just thinking about the future, they're not thinking about anything else, or it's usually tied to fate or religion or some aspect. But really, for me, I try to look at it in the present moment. And really, because if you think about the saying, like, what is meant to be will be, people usually say that at the end of something, usually whether it's like relationship, friendship, and like Desmond said, he said it at the end of his relationship, like, usually say, oh, well, what is meant to be will be. But what at that moment, if I'm thinking like, oh, well, if something ends and I'm thinking like, oh, if it's meant to be will be, I'm gonna, like, what do I have to do to learn from this situation? Because how you learn from that situation, basically, like Desmond said, is how you actually end up getting back to that situation. So say if it's like a relationship and you're not ready for that relationship or something like that, it really depends on what you do to learn from that situation. At the end of that relationship, you shouldn't be like, oh, well, what is meant to be will be, and if we meet again, we'll meet again. No, if you guys are gonna meet again, you should be in that right position. You should build yourself up to better than what you were now, and then you can be what you actually want to be. So that's why I say, like, do something. Like,
it's such a passive statement. That's why I think it's so hard for
exactly.
me per se to break it down, because it's like a really passive statement that it does have like it can have a complex meaning. I'm not gonna say it does have, but it can have a complex meaning if you choose to break it down the way you did. Because I do see how, you know, there are certain things today. Well, I kind of have like that shrug it off mentality, but really that shrug it off mentality really translates to, if it's meant to be, it'll be. But I don't necessarily subscribe to it though, because it is very passive. Like, things aren't just going to fall in my lap.
Exactly. That's why I say it's useless to say, well, what is meant to be will be, and you don't do anything about it. You know what I mean? Because I always felt like people need the awful truth, not the baby truth, like the type of truth that makes people want to get up, that hurts people's feelings, makes people want to get up and do something about it. And that's why, like, I hate social media, but that's really because, like, the ego that comes with people that are on social media and everything like that. But it's good for informational purposes, because I know we never really touched on, like, the Ahmaud Arbrey situation and the video of him getting gunned down in the street, but we see these videos and it elicits a certain type of reaction, and then we're like, oh, okay, you get more mad when you actually see it for yourself rather than just hearing about it or reading about it or something like that. So just do something about it, you know what I mean? And, like, imagine if fucking Martin Luther King was like, well, man, what is meant to be will be. Like, no, Martin. Let's go, Martin.
He's like, you know what? I'm gonna go have a real dream. I'm gonna take a nap. I'll see y'all later.
No. Well,
Bro,
will be,
Malcolm X, instead of by any means necessary.
well, what is meant to be will be. We'll never be that. We'll never be where we are now. So yeah, just, like, do something. You know what I mean? That's what I'm getting at.
I'm glad that you guys said a lot of that, and so I guess all three of us are pretty much on the same page with that. So my biggest problem with that way of thinking is primarily the abdication of responsibility. So it's like it just dissolves all that from the individual, and it's just like whatever's happened is predetermined or some external force to yourself. And like what you were saying, both you guys were saying, is anytime you want something in life, it's generally a consequence of your own action in some form or fashion. Like whether you going somewhere and putting yourself in the right place at the right time, or practicing and honing your skills for a certain moment or something like that, you're taking the initiative. And like if I just sat in my apartment all day, the opportunities that I get in life would be drastically reduced. And I do feel like when people do say that it is what it is, or what is meant to be will be, is typically, like Desmond was saying, a coping mechanism. And it's something to allow people to retreat back and just say, yeah, it's more so like they want just to accept it. And it's easy for them to say that and to accept it, as opposed to looking at it and being analytical and seeing what exactly transpired. Why did it happen that way? What could they do better in the future? And one of the biggest fixes to that, I feel like, well, one thing that I learned from it is the idea of detached involvement. So detached involvement is like you give a honest effort towards something, you really care about it, but you pursue it, but you also remove yourself and put yourself in an objective standpoint to where, yes, you do want a desired outcome. Yes, you actually put a good effort in. You know what a good, honest effort is, but you also don't take the failure as well. Yeah, if it does fail, you don't take it as a personal assessment of your right to exist, because a lot of times we predicate like our failures, meaning we take them personally as a personal attack. So because I failed at this, that means I'm a failure as a person. And we kind of talked about that in the episode about failure, and we all kind of said that that's not the case. You can fail at one thing and be perfectly fine. It's just that wasn't meant for you. That's something that you weren't good at. You might need to take more time at it, or something needs to change before you're able to actually be prosperous in that particular domain. But I think that there's something you could learn from it, and it applies in certain situations. It depends on how much you care about it. Like if it's a low stakes situation and you're not that involved in it, hence the detached involvement. But if you're not involved in it, period, you can have that attitude where it is what it is, or what is meant to be will be. But when it comes to like anything of any consequence that you may actually have some vested interest in, like a relationship, a job, family situations, anything like that, anything goal oriented that is to be sought, that attitude doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So how would you I'm gonna try to say this word. I'm gonna mess up. Differentiate.
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 Yeah, I can never say it when I think about it anyway. But how do you know that between the difference between good things come to those who wait, which I really feel is what is meant to be will be, and then go and get what you want right now? Like, how do you know the difference between those two?
I
Is it
think
a situation like?
when it comes to good things come to people who wait, I think that's also misleading. Like people, when you hear that, you think of waiting in a traditional context of you sitting idle while something is happening, and that's what I feel like a lot of what people when they read the religious text, they think that things are just going to happen. But no, it's like even if you are praying for things, it means that you still have to do some kind of action. It's like faith without action is dead, and people forget that a lot. So they'll just put things out in the ether. They'll say things. They'll believe things, but they don't actually believe it. They're not putting the feet to the pavement behind it. And so when it says like when you said like good things come to those who wait, what are you doing while you're waiting? Are you preparing for it? If so, yeah, good things will come for you because you're preparing yourself for those situations when they come up.
Yeah.
Mm,
Oh,
But you were asking how do you differentiate?
yeah, but I thought Desmond was gonna say something.
differentiate between that and what again?
Go get what you want. Like good things come to those who wait, or go get what you want right now.
I think there isn't a differentiation between them. I think good things come to those who go get what they want. Like I think it's as simple as that, because I can understand both sides. Good things come to those who wait. I can get that for the person who is unpolished, the person that tries really, really, really hard to get things done, has the outstanding work ethic, and always shows up to do what they're supposed to do. However, might not have the mental capacity to articulate some of their, actions into productive results. Good things are going to come to that person who's waiting, because in that time of waiting, they're going to, accumulate the necessary tools to now give them the ability to articulate their thoughts or their actions into something that's going to be productive for their well-being. So I think in that aspect, it is, I guess you could say that's where the differentiation becomes, because the person that is going to just go get it knows what they want out of life, I'm not going to say knows what they want out of life, but they know what they're good at. Not everybody, very, very few people are able to write down on paper and articulate what they really, really, really want out of life. If you scratch out the money aspect, if you scratch out the material stuff, like if you actually sit down and you can say, this is what I want out of life, I'm not sure how all of it's going to be pieced together when I get there, but I know this is where I want to go in life. Like those are people they're just going to go and get it regardless by any means necessary. They have that that Malcolm X mentality. I think, within a lot of, and I know we kind of touched on Malcolm X twice already, vaguely, but nevertheless, I think you kind of see two parts of it at the same time, where, you have the by any means necessary. And then you also have the, the saying where, the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. Preparing for it today might be a part of that waiting aspect, to where you're, honing your craft of some sort, and then that opportunity arrives in the future. I think that's one of the ways you could differentiate between them, because, not everybody has that go-getter mentality. Some people, they have to build their craft to get where they need to be, whereas some people just, this is what I want to do, I'm gonna do it. I'm not afraid to, fuck up along the way, but I know that I'm going to get there at some point, to where, some people are like, they're very, very risk adverse. They want to, spend as much time on honing their craft before they make that jump. So when they make that jump, they have a higher probability of succeeding.
I don't really think you need to differentiate, because, I mean, if you really understand it, the only difference between the two is just the semantics, just the way it's structured. Because you realize that you can do both at the same time. That you can have the idea, like the whole concept of what we talked about last week of being present. You can know what your overarching goal is for the future, but you can also be present in the moment and see what you're doing now. And so bide your time, and then also working continuously in that direction. It's not like you have to completely drop everything and take it literally and just wait, or you have to be nose to the grindstone continuously and burn yourself out. You don't have to do either of those things. I feel like there's a beautiful harmony in people who actually understand both concepts, and they live it out.
Yeah.
But I think, my fault, Josh, but I think, just to kind of not counteract that, but I think the waiting aspect comes to like opportunity. Like we all know that, like, when you're in a 9 to 5, or you're in any Fortune 500 or Fortune 250 company, opportunities are not overwhelming. Like, you have the opportunity to get the job, but to move to the next step, they only open up maybe 2 or 3 times per year, and you have over 100 people applying for it, or 100 people in consideration for it. So I could understand the waiting aspect. You kind of have to wait in a sense, because you're not going to be able to accumulate the necessary knowledge to get you where somebody who's been at the company for 10 years is already at. Like, they're going to look at the person that has tenure over somebody that, might be a little bit more good at what they do, but they don't have the time under their belt to know, all the intricacies of that particular business. Because I can tell you now that, like, at my job, they don't necessarily favor the newcomers who shine, because they understand that those newcomers that shine are the same people that have been there for 3 years, and kind of realize that you're going to need those newcomers who can shine to eventually, fill in where they need to fill in. You can't take every newcomer that shines and put them into a top tier position, because you're going to, it's going to be that sink or swim thing. And, if nobody has tenure or the ability to kind of like understand how to deal with hardship, then you're going to sink every time. You kind of got to get, I'm not going to say complacent in a sense, but you got to have to get some experience under your belt before you can make that next jump. Speaking from, just if you wanted to try and differentiate between the two and say the good things come to those who wait, that would be an example of it, per se, where you could have the go-getter, where it's like, I am the fresh newcomer, and I'm going to get everything I can right off the bat. Gotcha. And I'm going to raise hell if I don't get it. And if I can't get it here, then I'm going to get it somewhere else.
Actually, now that I think about it, the one where good things come to those who wait seems to promote more of a lifestyle of patience. So you could still approach things with the same amount of drive, but like its underlying message of not being upset about the outcome. And so, like, just understanding for like what I was saying, it's not an assessment of your existential being. Like, it's not saying if you fail at this, you can fall off the handle because you failed at this and therefore you are a failure. It's the idea that yes, you failed at that, or yes, this did work. This was a success. This was a failure. All it is an outcome. An outcome is an outcome, and you learn from it.
Facts.
I really asked that question because I know I used to struggle with that when I was my early days when I was dealing with relationships. And it's really basically that moment where you want things to work out, where you're trying to like you're pushing, you're like, okay, forget it, man. And then you're like what do you do? Like, do you keep trying, or do you sit there and say like, well, if it's meant to be, it will be, you know what I mean? So that's really where I came up with that question.
But
I think
go ahead, Brian.
I think that's one of the worst places for that logic to apply, like in a relationship, because
Mhm.
oftentimes people, they don't have the emotional maturity, or like just the maturity period, in order to resolve conflicts. And there's a lot of relationships, friendships, relationships, dating, all that, that had I not taken the initiative to have a conversation, it wouldn't have happened. Just because the other person there was a misunderstanding of some sort, and if I just left it to their devices, then we would have just been on. We would never reach common ground. So it's all about the taking the initiative, because someone has to do it. It doesn't just happen. You can't count on other people. You only can be responsible for yourself. And so by me saying that, okay, this is a person that I value, and I do feel like this is a misunderstanding, or hey, I was in the wrong, we could probably make amends for it, and we could have that conversation. But just to say that, or expect that everyone is going to understand the situation and be objective and say, okay, this is my role in it, this was his role in it, and how can we reach a common ground, or is it even something worth reconciling? You can't really expect that on anyone else. Like it's wonderful if somebody does have that ability to, but I can't sit here and just think and give everyone that same that good grace and think that that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah. You about to say something, Des?
Yeah, what I was gonna say was echoing what Brian just said, but I was gonna say it more. If you're looking to have some motivational or coming to terms with yourself moment, and you need something like this to kind of make everything easier, the one thing that I always kind of told myself would be, and I don't necessarily like preach it, but it's one thing that I think in my mind: good things will come to those who focus on themselves and make sure that what they accomplish is for their best interest and not for the acceptance of those around them. And whatever is meant to be based off of those, based off that dedication, will be like that. If you're going to use these for the vague sense, or for the vague sense of what they are, then you kind of have to sit here and say, okay, me just saying this is just a coping mechanism, but I can take this coping mechanism and I can tweak it a little bit to where it's no longer a coping mechanism. It's more of a daily affirmation for myself. So I will realize that as I focus more on myself and I become more emotionally balanced and I figure out what it is I like and what I want out of life, then that's when the relationships will come. Because I can honestly say, like, since I've taken the time out to figure out what it is that I enjoy, and like I've always been preaching over the past 2 months, fall in love with that inner child again, the interaction with women and you know whoever else, like your friends or your best friends or old friends from high school that you haven't talked to in 10 years, those interactions just become more organic, because it's no longer a what can I get from you conversation. It's actually like, okay, how are you doing, where you been at, what can I do to help you. Like it's more or less like that there's always a lot of your self-help gurus and your millionaires will say, I found happiness when I started living a life of servitude. Like I amass my fortune because I live off the life off of service instead of taking and being greedy. So that's one way to take what we're talking about today. You could brush it to the side, but when you actually take it back and you break it down of how to construct it to where it's beneficial to you, then you can see some use from it.
Yeah, that's what I definitely had to learn. I definitely had to learn that. But Brian was talking about as far as taking the initiative, like I would always think back with it while I'm in a relationship, like, should I not do that? Should I take the initiative? Should I just leave it alone? Whatever. Usually I end up taking initiative and it end up backfiring on me in some sort. So but yeah, that's usually what happens though. But I got you.
But the thing I'll say though is when you do things with genuine intentions and you don't really care of how it's going to be perceived, you really don't have any ill will or no feelings of embarrassment if something doesn't go the way you think it's supposed to go. Because like I can say a lot of the interactions that I've had, they've been interactions for like hours and then I don't talk to that person again. Like I don't sit there and feel like, you know, oh, if I wouldn't have never reached out, we wouldn't have spoken again for another 10 years. But it's like, you know, the simple fact that as humans, we have thousands and millions and whatever you want to, you know, whatever number you want to put on it, but we have that amount of thoughts going through our mind a day. And the fact that, you know, out of all those thoughts, a couple of those thoughts, you know, I was a part of, I mean, that's fine with me. You know, find the good somewhere in it. You don't have to sit here and think that, oh, well, that person was trying to use me or I was trying to use that person. Just, you know, take it for what it is and just charge it to the game and, you know, be present in the next interaction.
When you do whatever it is that you're supposed to do, like what you were saying about whatever, like serving yourself essentially, by you doing that, whatever happens is ultimately what's best for you. So even if something didn't work out, like I was an advocate against saying at least this happened, but also on that same side is that possibly could be the best thing because you're being true to yourself. Like if something bad happens to you in a situation because you were honest about it, maybe that's the best thing. And like what's the inverse of that? Like you were dishonest and you might have got it, but you would have felt guilty about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about knowing who you are, standing up for that, and I mean, whatever happens, that's if you're really doing that, then good things are gonna come. Period.
Yeah, that's
But
why.
it's definitely like an action you have to take.
Yeah, that's why at the end of things, you should never be too down in the dumps or be in a non-recoverable state because you know who you are. You should gravitate towards back that even if like a relationship ends, like you shouldn't be too depressed to the point where you can't recover. Like if you're happy, you know who you are, you should be okay, cool. I can recover from this, like, because I know who I am. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I got it.
Josh, you brought up an interesting point. Were you about to say something, Des?
I was gonna say there should always be some form of groundwork to where when it collapses, you still have something to build off of.
So, Josh, when you asked the question about how it played a part in your history as it pertains to relationships, I thought about this. Why is it that these sayings, like it is what it is or what is meant to be will be, like why is it that those when people say and they pertain to relationships?
Why?
Yeah.
Because I think they I want to say watch too much movies, but think it's like a destiny aspect of, oh, we're gonna be together in the future, or like we're meant to be together, or something like that. That's why I think, because you know, two people being together, that's like a bond. You know, people are going to be together and they're going to get married no matter where you're at. You know what I mean? So I feel people think it's like a destiny aspect, so that's why they focus more on the relationship rather than like other aspects of their life, like a job or other things, really.
But they don't say it when their car breaks down.
No, because you have to pay. Because it costs money. You're like, oh, what it meant to be will be. Nah, you got to earn that money to get that car fixed. It's different. Like,
I mean, relationships come at a cost too.
Not financial costs.
Not financial, but it's at a cost.
Yes, the point is the financial part, though. I mean, if your car breaks down, you're gonna be more upset than saying
what's meant to be will be.
Like, damn, man, I gotta pay more. Yeah, so it's different.
Desmond, why do you think that is that people tend to group those things to relationships and not just typical life?
Because I think we're all hopeless romantics in a sense. You kind of you give yourself such a like importance in somebody's life that you feel almost that place in that other person's life can't be replaced, instead of understanding that, you know, we're all replaceable. Or you could look at it in the sense where we're all replaceable, but maybe it was the right person, wrong time, or wrong person, right time, you know, phenomenon that people like to believe in. So it's really just a mix of everything we tell ourselves to cope with what our current reality is like.
But yeah, you got to tell yourself too, though, that everyone isn't always going to be ready for everything that's presented, to every opportunity that's presented. Like everyone's not always going to be ready. Everybody's ready at their own time. So
yeah, and it's kind of, I think you'll sell yourself short if you just, you know, if you're buying into that, because there's an assumption that you guys are still going to grow unilaterally instead of apart. Like it's like there is no. I mean, I'm not going to say that there's no chance of it happening, but you hardly will see people split and then grow apart and then somehow manage to come back together. Like I could understand if it's somebody you're really feeling like, you know, the chance is always there. Like, don't get me wrong. I will never say no chance because I've told myself no chance and I've still succumbed to what I told myself I never would. So, you know, I'll never say no chance, but I'll say that the probability of it happening is always, you know, slimmer because not everybody's going to grow mentally to where they set boundaries for what they'll tolerate versus, you know, what they won't tolerate. People will have aspirations for what they want out of life, but when it comes to that character aspect that you're building, you know what you're going to stand on. I mean, if it's not solid, then you're likely to repeat.
Do you really? That's another question that it actually brings up too. I'm glad you mentioned that. So the idea of wrong person, right time, or right person, wrong time. Do you guys believe in that? Because I have a little bit of trouble just accepting it at face value for what that is, because I understand the human capacity. Like, I've been in situations before where I met a woman who I was interested in, and then as a consequence, I changed my behavior because that's exactly what I wanted. And so I understand how people act when they get what they want, or when they're presented with an option that's exactly what they want, and
What do
that'll shift that.
you mean you change your behavior?
You should change my behavior
What do you mean you change your behavior?
in terms of like the priority and being more thoughtful. Like I wasn't acting towards the to the detriment of people, but it's just a certain level of care you have for an individual when you actually are invested in them, and that's something that you actually want. It's a different way you carry yourself. You're more thoughtful. You're more intentional about your actions.
Uh, to say, well, you said wrong person, right time, or
I mean, they're both the same thing. Right person, wrong time. Wrong person, right time. Did I
I
just
kind,
say the same thing twice?
Nah,
I kind of believe in that, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't feel anyone is the right person because I feel that's like a once again like a destiny aspect. Like that
Hmm.
person is supposed to be with you, like the right person. Maybe if you're talking about the right person as far as like compatible, yeah, but with that, like I said before, everyone isn't always going to be ready for the opportunity that is presented to them, whether it's relationships, like everyone's not always going to be ready for that relationship. And that's okay. It's not necessarily their fault. You just have to learn from that. And then if you guys meet again, you meet again. Or if you guys want to stay in touch, stay in touch. Or if you toxic, don't talk to that person because you're toxic. so yeah, yeah, it just depends. It depends.
reason why I say no between at the possibility of them being the same thing is because how I would perceive, you know, right person, wrong time is like this is the person that you consider you're spending the rest of your life with. They have all the qualities, all the traits. You know, it becomes a situation to where there's very little compromising because everything fits. But you're not at a point to where you have the emotional responsibility to be in a committed situation. Like I could understand something like that because, you know, like I've said, like interactions become more organic. You're able to appreciate, you know, women for who they are and, you know, their own autonomy. But at the same time, I realize that I'm not at a place to where I'm ready to be responsible for another person's actions because of something I might say or might do. Like I'm not at a point where I'm ready to be cognizant. Like I want to be a free individual that, you know, continues to do things the way that, you know, it's not at a detriment to myself. You know, it could be, you know, there could be things I could do to where it'd be a better benefit to myself, but nevertheless, I feel like I'm still doing stuff that's beneficial to myself that doesn't necessarily have the room for another person just yet. And I think the easiest way you could, you know, put this into real life perspective is, you know, someone who is kind of consistently chasing their goals. You know, they have that professional job they've been looking for. You know, you could be your lawyer, your doctor, or, you know, even in, you know, our cases, you could be IT or you can be therapist. Like this is the job you want, and you're only dedicated to putting your time into advancing your career. A lot of people, and my godbrother told me this over the weekend. He's, you know, he said, reason why I don't have any children is because I look at the people around me and I realize, the sacrifices they have to make, and I can look myself in the mirror and say, I'm not ready to make that sacrifice. Like that is easy to look at that and say, like, damn, there's so many fine women. Like I go to work, and I see, women that I could see myself with, but I also realize that the sacrifice that comes with it, I'm not ready for that. That's right person, wrong time. Whereas wrong person, right time, I think you kind of shoot yourself in the foot because, or wrong person, right time, because if you're living the way you feel you're living, to where, you've reached a point to where you're emotionally stable, to where you can handle a relationship, then it makes it a lot easier, at least for me, to weed out people's BS.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially that means you just chose the wrong person. That's your fault.
Yeah, the reason that
was my fault. I was gonna say they're both selfish at the end of the day, as far as the bottom line, but there's just two different scenarios on that why one has one saying and one has the other saying. My fault. I was gonna listen to what you were gonna say.
No, I can respect that. It's the reason that I initially asked why, or do you guys believe in either of the two, is just because of what we were speaking about earlier about everything being up to chance. So it's not like even with both of those things, I feel like there's a certain element of determinism, like something is finite.
Yeah. You mentioned faith without action is like basically nothing, right, Brian? I know you're a person that believes this, but why do you need faith? You said faith without action. So action without faith, do you really need faith if you just commit an action? You're probably not the right person to answer this, but I'm just saying.
Why am I not the right person to answer this?
You're going into a whole different.
No, I'm so to abstract this away from a religious conversation, I would think that faith is the idea of knowing something can be done or believing that it can be done, and then the action is you actually moving towards that direction. So if you are just putting in action but you don't have a course that you're on, like what are you doing? Are you actually going to reach a destination? You're going to get somewhere, but it's not going to be intentional. You don't know where it's going to be.
Gotcha.
So I think it's the major distinction is the intent. Is faith is setting out and saying, okay, this is what I believe in. I believe that if I work hard at this, I can become the supervisor, or I can have my own company, or I can have the next monopoly like Jeff Bezos, like we were talking about earlier. You can set those things. So that's the faith part of it. But then the action is what drives that. If you were just to have action without faith, then there's no real destination. Like I said, you could be a cog in somebody else's machine, or you could just end up anywhere.
I'm not trying to go in a religious conversation.
Yeah, I'm not trying to have the conversation.
Anything else you want to add, Des?
Why y'all not trying to have that conversation?
I just don't feel like it.
It will be a long conversation. That's why. Very long.
I think as long as you can make it long. Pause just in case.
Why do we have to say pause? Like, why do we still say this?
I don't know, bro. It's just it's indoctrinated.
Male masculinity is like you unsure yourself. Like,
it's second nature, bro.
Well, I know I'm just saying, like, we pie today, nigga. Why? I'm serious.
The conversation will be too long.
I think it's because we have a joke culture. It's like we're just so used to being joked on by each other, by your friends, that when you say stuff like that, they're gonna get you. So it's kind of like ingrained. It's like secondhand. It's very reactionary. Whereas if you say something questionable, they're gonna get you.
But I got you. All right. If you guys have nothing else to say, we can wrap it up. You got a album of the week, Des?
Nah. So I'm not doing album of the week this week. What I'll do is, I think I did this last year too. I have a book of the week. Could be book of the month as well. I think I'll do, like, if we have a 5-week month, I'll do 4 album of the week and then 1 book of the month, or 3 albums of the week and 1 book of the month if we have a 4-month week. But book I'm currently reading, autobiography of Malcolm X. I read it when I was in high school. I wrote a paper on it when I was in college. I'm out of college and I'm gonna read it again.
Gotcha.
If you need a copy, don't hit me up, but you can find one.
Gotcha. You still studying for the ASVAB?
LSAT?
That's an ASVAB. What am I thinking of?
No, I took it on Monday. I get my scores back on June 9th.
Cool.
But yeah, I am still studying for that too, because I'll probably take it one more time just to see where I stand at as far as like a happy median or happy mean mode. Average. We'll just say average. See where I average at.
All right. But all right, guys, if you guys like the discussion today, don't forget to hit the like button. We will see you guys next week. It'll be Brian. It'll be myself. Peace. Hey guys, thank you for tuning into the discussion. If you guys want to see more content, we also had the Feel the Love series with Brian Carey as he breaks down the methods of plant growth. Joshua versus the movies, where I go against all your favorite movies, and Joshua versus the music, where I go against all your favorite music videos. So don't forget to check out the content, and I'm going to see you guys in the next discussion.